Hello everyone, Jacob here. In today's lesson we're going to be talking about this structure right here, subject, verb, object, with something past participle, with 뭐뭐뭐 PP. And in Korean this means 뭐뭐뭐 한 채로. And it's really useful if you want to describe the state of something, during an action. Alright, this is how we use this structure with something past participle. And let's just go ahead and look at our first example, which is a pretty simple, straightforward example. I like listening to music. I like listening to music with my eyes closed. I like listening to music with my eyes closed. So here we have a full sentence. I like listening to music with something past participle, with my eyes closed. Closed is the past participle of the verb close. And what are we doing in this sentence? Well, I'm describing the state of my eyes. They are closed, while I'm listening to music. Alright? So in Korean, what would this mean? This would mean 눈 감은 채로 음악 듣는 걸 좋아해요. Alright? And that's a pretty straightforward example, but let's go ahead and look at a second example. It's more comfortable to sit on the floor with your legs crossed. It's more comfortable to sit on the floor with your legs crossed. What does with your legs crossed mean? 다리를 포갠 채로. Alright, so here, this is actually true, I believe. In Korea, after I came to Korea, I had to start sitting on the floor a lot while I was eating in a restaurant, and for a lot of Westerners, this is kind of uncomfortable. So I realized that if I cross my legs, well, it's more comfortable. So again, I'm describing kind of the state of my legs. They are crossed while I'm sitting on the floor. Okay, it's more comfortable to sit on the floor with your legs crossed. Okay. Alright, so this is not too difficult. These examples are pretty straightforward, but there are a few things that you need to be careful about. So I'm going to write a little warning sign right here. And I want you to be careful because even though most of the time we have to use a past participle, there are some exceptions. We don't say opened. We don't say opened. Opened is the past participle of the verb open, but we don't actually say with 뭐뭐뭐 opened. We want to say with 뭐뭐뭐 open. Okay? And this is because some verbs actually have a past participle form, and they also have an adjective form. Alright, and I don't really want you to worry too much about this, but in this case you want to go with the adjective form, not the past participle. So let's go ahead and look at an example with open. I usually cook with the windows open. Okay, in this case you don't want to say with the windows opened, you'd want to say with the windows open. Alright, so that's just something you need to be careful about when you're using open. Okay, let's look at another exception, another kind of common exception, but there are plenty. I'm just going to give you two just to kind of make sure you understand that there are exceptions. Sometimes we don't use the past participle. You have to use the adjective form. Alright, another one would be with fill. We don't say filled. We don't say with 뭐뭐뭐 filled. You want to say in general with 뭐뭐뭐 full. Okay, so instead of using filled, I recommend using full in most situations. So let's look at an example. Don't talk with your mouth full. Okay, this is actually a pretty common phrase in English. My mom used to tell me this all the time when I was young. Don't talk with your mouth full. If you have food in your mouth, then you shouldn't talk, right? It's rude. So people say this, don't talk with your mouth full. Okay, with your mouth filled sounds weird. With your mouth full. Okay? So these are just two examples. I'm sure there are others, but I think these are kind of the most common ones. Some other ones that I could think of right now are empty. We don't usually say with something emptied, but with something just empty, the adjective form. So that's one thing I want you to be careful about, but there's another thing that you have to kind of be careful about. Alright, so I'm going to write a second warning sign. So let's do another warning sign. And I want to talk about how to say basically 입은 채로 or 쓴 채로 or 신은 채로. Alright, in this case we actually have to say with clothes, accessories, or shoes. We don't use a past participle in this case. You just want to say with clothes, accessories, shoes on or off. So this would be the way to say 뭐뭐뭐 입은, 뭐뭐뭐 입은, 뭐뭐뭐 쓴, or 뭐뭐뭐 신은 채로. Alright? 뭐뭐뭐 입은, 뭐뭐뭐 쓴, 뭐뭐뭐 신은 채로. We don't say with something worn, or we don't use a past participle in this case. You just want to say with 뭐뭐뭐 on or off. And let's go ahead and look at some examples. Koreans like to go swimming. Koreans like to go swimming with their clothes on. Okay, so what does this mean? This means 옷을 입은 채로 수영하는 걸 좋아해요. Alright, and actually this is a little bit weird to most foreigners because foreigners usually go swimming just in a bathing suit, but Koreans like to go swimming with their clothes on. Alright, let's look at an example with an accessory. I grew up in Paris, where there are a lot of very famous churches and cathedrals, and just so you know, it's rude to enter a church. It's rude to enter a church with your hat on. Okay? If you go to a really famous church in Paris or in Europe, then make sure you take off your hat because it's rude to enter a church with your hat on. Alright? And actually in Korea you have a similar rule, kind of similar. You should take something off before you go into people's houses. So what do you take off? You should always go into a Korean's house with your shoes off. Okay, you should always go into a Korean person's house with your shoes off. Okay, so when you're talking about clothes, accessories, or shoes, we don't actually use a pp, we just use on or off, and this would be how we say 입은 채로, 쓴 채로, 신은 채로. Alright, so that's just one thing to be careful about. The last thing that's kind of similar is when you're using it with an electronic device, like a phone, a TV, a radio, something like that, we usually say with an electronic device, on or off. Alright? And in Korean, what does this mean? 뭐뭐뭐, 뭐뭐뭐 킨, or 뭐뭐뭐 끈 채로. Alright? So this is actually the most common way to say this. So let's look at an example. Most people prefer driving with the radio on. Okay, so what does this mean? This means 라디오를 킨 채로 운전하는 거 좋아해요. Alright, so again, when you're talking about an electronic device like a radio or a TV or a phone, often we just say with 뭐뭐뭐 on or with 뭐뭐뭐 off. Some people, like driving with the radio off because it's kind of distracting. But some people like driving with the radio on. And what this means actually, what's missing here is basically turned. We can say, you could say most people prefer driving with the radio turned on, but often we just say it like this because it's shorter, it's easier. Alright, so this is basically how we use this structure with 뭐뭐뭐 pp, or in these cases with 뭐뭐뭐 on or off, to mean 뭐뭐뭐 한 채로. In some sentences you can change with and you can use without. Alright, so like I just said, some people prefer driving with the radio on, but some people prefer driving with the radio off. So I could say some people prefer driving without the radio on. Okay, and it would have the opposite meaning of this sentence. So that is possible. It is possible to use without. I would say most of the time we use with, but it is possible to use without. Alright, I hope you understood. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and I'll see you next time.